Have you ever felt like you've hit rock bottom, like everything you've worked for has been taken away in an instant? Today, I want to share a story that will change the way you see your darkest moments. It's the story of Helena, a 42-year-old woman whose lifelong dream was about to turn into her worst nightmare. Helena had always dreamed of flying. So at 42, boarding a plane for the first time was a moment of pure magic. She was off on vacation with her best friends, her face pressed against the window, watching the clouds drift by. She felt a sense of freedom she'd never known before. This trip was meant to be the adventure of a lifetime. Little did she know, it would change her life in a way she could never have imagined. Suddenly, a deafening bang shook the entire plane, a violent impact. The cabin lights flickered. The pilot's voice, trembling, crackled over the intercom. "We've had a bird strike. Please remain calm." But calm was the last thing anyone felt. The initial shock quickly turned into widespread panic. Screams filled the air. Moments later, the plane began to shake violently, lurching from side to side. Then everything went black. When Helena's eyes fluttered open, the first thing she felt was the gritty texture of sand against her cheek. The smell of salt water and smoke filled the air. Disoriented, she sat up. All around her was a devastating scene of twisted metal and smoldering wreckage. The plane was gone, shattered into 1,000 pieces across the beach. She called out for her friends, her voice hoarse and desperate, but the only reply was the haunting sound of the waves. She was utterly alone, the sole survivor of a catastrophe, saved by what could only be called a miracle. But as the sun set on that first day, her miraculous survival began to feel more like a curse. Days blurred into weeks. The initial shock gave way to a relentless fight for survival. Helena, a city woman who barely knew how to boil an egg, had to become a master of the wilderness. She learned to collect rainwater in large leaves, her throat parched and raw. She foraged for unfamiliar fruits, cautiously testing each one, praying it wouldn't be her last meal. Her greatest achievement was a small, makeshift hut pieced together from branches, palm fronds, and salvaged scraps from the plane. It was her only shield against the scorching sun and the chilling night winds. Her hands, once soft, were now covered in cuts and calluses. Her clothes were tattered rags. Her body ached with a deep, gnawing hunger. But her spirit, though battered, refused to break. Every single morning, with renewed determination, she would climb the highest rocks on the island. She'd stand there for hours, her eyes scanning the vast, empty horizon, searching for a ship, a plane, any sign of rescue. And every night as darkness fell, she would build a fire, a signal, a beacon of hope. She would feed the flames, watching the smoke curl up into the star-filled sky, praying that someone somewhere would see it. But day after day, and night after night, no one came. The ocean remained empty, the sky silent. Hope was a flickering candle in a hurricane. One evening, after another fruitless day of watching and waiting, Helena was at her breaking point. Exhaustion had seeped into her bones. She mechanically built her signal fire, the motions automatic, her heart heavy with despair. She watched the flames dance for a while, a lonely spectator to her own fading hope. When the fire dwindled to glowing embers, she crawled into her small hut and surrendered to a restless sleep. She didn't notice a few embers, still glowing red-hot, hidden beneath the ash. Hours later, a sudden, powerful gust of wind swept across the island. It whipped through the dying embers, breathing new life into them. Sparks flew through the air, landing on the dry straw of her hut. In an instant, her shelter, her only sanctuary, erupted into a terrifying inferno. Helena woke up to a wall of heat and blinding light. Panic seized her. She scrambled out, coughing, her eyes stinging from the smoke. She desperately tried to beat back the flames, to save the few precious belongings she had salvaged, but the fire was too fast, too ferocious. It devoured everything: her shelter, her tools, her protection. All of it turned to black ash, in a matter of minutes. She fell to her knees on the sand, the heat of the fire on her face, the cold of despair in her heart. A raw, guttural scream tore from her throat. She looked up at the indifferent sky and cried out, "God, why? Why are you doing this to me? You took my friends, you left me here to suffer, and now you've taken the one thing I had left." Her body shook with sobs, tears of rage and grief carving paths through the soot on her face. She wept until she had no tears left, until her body gave up and she collapsed onto the sand, falling into a deep, empty sleep under the open sky. She had lost everything. It was the end, or so she thought. At dawn, a deep, rhythmic, thrumming sound echoed through the island, growing louder and louder. It was a sound she hadn't heard in what felt like a lifetime. A helicopter. Helena's eyes shot open. Adrenaline surged through her. She scrambled to her feet and sprinted towards the beach, her heart pounding against her ribs. Tears, this time of disbelief and overwhelming relief, streamed down her face as she saw the rescue helicopter hovering over the water. A figure leaned out, shouting over the roar of the blades. "We saw the huge column of smoke during the night. We came to investigate to see if anyone needed help." Helena froze. The smoke, the fire, the blaze she believed had destroyed her last shred of hope, was the very thing that had guided her rescuers to her. It wasn't an act of destruction. It was a signal flare of divine intervention. The fire that took her shelter had given her back her life. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying her away from the island, she looked down at the tranquil beach, at the blackened patch of sand where her hut once stood. A profound understanding washed over her. Through her tears, she whispered, "Forgive me, God, for ever doubting you." Helena's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes what we perceive as our greatest loss is actually a hidden blessing. Our most painful moments can be the catalysts for our greatest breakthroughs. When you feel lost, when you feel like everything is falling apart, remember Helena. The fire that you think is destroying you might just be the signal that leads to your rescue. God's plan is often a mystery, and even in the ashes of our despair, a new beginning is waiting to rise. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched you, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more inspiring content. We'll see you in the next video.